Today, I want to get into the idea of perfection. This topic is top of mind because I've had many clients in the past who are hell bent on doing everything the way it's supposed to be done in a speech or a presentation. So, for example, a CEO will walk into a room and after the meeting, they will come and tell me, hey, my hands were down here, my posture was like this, I didn't say this word, I should have used this vocabulary, I should have made eye contact like this. Everything had to be perfect. But imagine a life where you are constantly evaluating every single action that you take. Constantly. Can you imagine that? Going through life and just analyzing everything. How much more anxious will you be if you were doing that? The answer being very, very anxious. So many times when we are preparing for a presentation or a speech or a meeting, we do better when we are less focused on every single aspect of what we are doing. Now, another problem this creates is in this quest of chasing perfection, you often see people losing connection with the audience. Here's what I mean. Let's say I'm so particular about what words need to come out of my mouth. I'm so particular about what my hands are doing, what the eye contact is like. Where is my focus right now? My focus is entirely on myself. My focus is on how am I doing? How do I look? Am I doing the right thing? Am I avoiding the wrong things? So that's one. The other thing with that is when you are trying to be perfect, it often comes at the expense of a connection with your audience. So if I'm on stage and I am reading from my notes because I don't want to get any of the words wrong, I don't want to miss a line, I want to say everything the way it's written out. And by the way, there are situations for that where the words that you say really matter, especially in legal situations and political situations. So I get that. But for most people, you don't need a word-for-word speech in a presentation at work or when you're giving an opening ceremony. So imagine if I was just to read the words out loud, what am I doing up there? What is the audience thinking? The audience isn't really thinking, hey, this person came here to connect with me, but more so to put on a performance, to make sure their words are said in the order they wanted them to be said in. Now, this can be changed. If you go in with a script and you're just reading from the script, but your message is focused on the audience, your message is thought-provoking, and you really put a lot of time and care into the words you've written out, and you want to make sure, hey, I don't really have the ability to say these words off the top of my head. I won't be able to remember, so it's easy for me to have notes there. That is totally fine. In fact, you would see Steve Jobs, if you look at his commencement address at Stanford, he was reading through the notes the entire time. But A, he's Steve Jobs, and B, he had a very, very good story for each one of the points he shared there. So there is a time and place for it. But for the most part, people use it as a crutch. People use perfection as a crutch where they are so concerned about their own performance that they say, oh, I'm just going to read some notes. I'm just going to show up there, read off the slides. I don't really know what I'm talking about. And then on top of that, because they're so concerned with every single gesture, I've had countless public speaking coaches that I've seen who always say, this is the right way to do this. That is the right way to do that. And yes, there are foundations. So for example, if you are speaking on stage, you don't want to be staring at the floor the entire time. Or you don't want to mumble and people can't hear you. Of course, there are foundations, but you also have to acknowledge that there is a speaking style. What do I mean by speaking style? You and I can be completely different people and be phenomenal public speakers in our own right, but our style of public speaking could be completely different. You compare Oprah Winfrey, for example, with Simon Sinek. Both of them are considered exceptional presenters, very, very different styles. Is one of them wrong, one of them right? Simon Sinek talks extremely fast. He has a lot of ums and uhs when he speaks. He moves his body a lot. Whereas if you look at someone like Barack Obama, he takes a lot of pauses. He's very slow, very methodical. He's known for the pauses, in fact. So the style is very different. But if I were to go to Simon Sinek and say, hey, this is how Barack Obama speaks. Notice how he slows down a lot. Notice how he pauses a lot. And look at the hand gestures he's using. They're not as out of control as yours are. So how about you tone yours down? Wouldn't that feel like I'm suppressing Simon Sinek's potential and his personality? But yet this is what we do. And this is something that I did with my clients when I was a novice, where, hey, these are the 12 unwritten rules of public speaking and communication, and therefore you have to follow them. No, this is not correct. Yes, you need to learn the foundation, but then you have to learn to prioritize connection over perfection. I'll say that again. Prioritize connection over perfection. Your thought process up there should not be about every tiny thing that you are doing. You should not be evaluating your body language, your gestures and everything, because when people get nervous before a presentation, they're always criticizing themselves. They're always looking at themselves. They're always thinking of all the things they're doing wrong. So when they step on stage, instead of now the focus being on the audience, the focus being on the people you're there to help, the focus turns to themselves, where, hey, I'm on stage, I want to make sure this whole thing is about me. And that's not the point of public speaking. That's not the point of communication. Yes, you want to do a good enough job where the audience benefits, but good enough job does not come from the perfect gestures, the perfect stage presence, or the perfect voice. It comes from authenticity. If I said the perfect words for 10 minutes, you know what would happen? Yes, you might say, wow, he's a good speaker, but you know what you might also say? That sounded really fake. That didn't really sound like a real person. To me, that sounded like something that was rehearsed and choreographed and not something I can actually relate to. If you look at the speakers that you connect with the most, these are people who speak conversationally, who speak as if you're just sitting next to them. They speak in simple language. Now, let me ask you this. When you're having fun, talking to your friends, talking to your family, how often in that moment are you self-analyzing or criticizing? When you're talking about something you can talk about till the end of time, maybe you're talking about video games, maybe you're talking about the brand new project you're working on, how often do you analyze what you're saying while you're in the midst of speaking with passion? Probably not at all, because your focus is not on analysis. Your focus is you're so passionate about the information, you just want to get it out, and people can feel that energy. So in conversation, we don't edit. In conversation, we don't have to, oh, I forgot what to say. Let me continue from this part. Oh, I forgot my sentence. We don't do that. So when you're on stage, the same logic applies. When you forget a line, it's a lot like forgetting a line in a conversation. You just forget it and you move on. So I see so many people who aspire to be like a public speaker who's generic, who's like everyone else, who has these clasped hands and posture that you think you're supposed to have. Learn them. Yes, know what's good and what's not so good. But at the same time, find your style. And when you do find your style, I want you to commit to your style and say, hey, this is how I speak. Some people are not going to like it. Like for me, I tend to speak very fast. And throughout my entire career, the only feedback I got was slow down, slow down, slow down. But you know what? I notice when I slow down a lot, it also kills my enthusiasm. It also kills my passion. When I get excited, I want to talk fast. I want to increase my flow of words. I like it. And when I see other speakers speak, someone like Gary Vee, for example, he speaks really fast. He has tons of curse words in there. Now, you can go up to him and say, hey, that's not suitable for a professional setting. And yes, there's an argument for that. But I like the way he speaks. So for you, you might have a preference of the kinds of speakers you enjoy listening to and the kinds of speakers you want to be like. So you want to find a healthy balance between who you are, what your style is, and who you want to be. So remember, do not prioritize yourself when you're up on stage. Don't try to analyze yourself all the time. Always prioritize connection over perfection. I'll say that again, connection over perfection.